Northern Ontario's chronic need for physicians and better access to consistent quality health care was serious enough that a medical school was opened in Thunder Bay and Sudbury to help deal with it. That was more than a decade ago. Now, with upwards of 525 doctors graduated, we wanted to find out how far that and other measures have gone to address the shortfalls in care north of the French River. So, joining us now to help us do that in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Clay Hammett, family physician and anesthetist in Kenora, Ontario, and an Ontario Medical Association representative for the district. In Dryden, Ontario, via Skype, Chuck Schmidt, recruitment and fundraising coordinator for the Dryden Regional Health Centre. In Marathon, Ontario, via Skype, Sarah Newberry, rural physician in Marathon. And here in our studio in the Big Smoke, it's Catherine Chervin, Vice Dean for Academic at the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, or NOSM, as everybody calls it. And we're grateful, Catherine, to have you here and our guests in Points Beyond to have a conversation about practicing medicine in Ontario's north. Just to set the table for the discussion, we thought we'd play a little clip here from our Ontario Hub's field producer, Jayan Jagannathan, who recently spent some time in White River, Ontario, looking into a piece about recruiting and retaining physicians there. So, Sheldon, let's run a snippet of that and then we'll come back and chat.
We don't have a hospital here, and we only have funding for one physician. So we look to the younger ones, and anybody coming out of school, they want to have peer support for sure. Plus they want to be able to use all of their skills, which means working in a hospital. So right now we're putting ads in the newspapers, in the medical journals. But as far as going to these recruitment fairs, we just don't have the funding to do that, and we don't have the manpower.
You know, it kind of frustrates me because we're constantly neglected by the province. We're covered under an underserviced area program where we do get some funding for the clinic, but the local taxpayers pay some of the operating costs here for the clinic, and so we are penalized for living in the north.
Chuck, let's start with you. How well does that short snippet characterize the way things are in Northern Ontario?
I think it's a fair representation of a lot of things that we're seeing throughout the north. Since the inception of the Northern Ontario School of Medicine for us here in Dryden, we've seen 3 graduates gravitate to our community, and it's been a big help. It's provided us some hope for the longer term.
Let's put some numbers on this if we can. Sheldon, let's bring this up. This is from NOSM's own report to Northern Ontario from 2017. 94% of NOSM graduates who have completed both their MD and residency programs at the school are now practicing in Northern Ontario. 94%. Since 2011, more than 160 NOSM-educated family docs now practice in Northern Ontario. In 2016, NOSM contributed more than $100 million of new economic activity in the north. Approximately 92% of NOSM MD students are from Northern Ontario, and more than 90 communities participate in the education of NOSM learners. Okay, let's go to our NOSM representative here. What jumps out at you from those numbers there that you think is most instructive to know?
Well, I think it's important to put the numbers in context. Sure. And the 94% is accurate for those who've completed both undergrad and postgrad at NOSM. Those are a lesser percentage of all the graduates. So you can look at people who completed undergrad at NOSM or people who completed residency programs, postgraduate education at NOSM, and depending on which group you look at with which lens, you'll get different numbers. The bottom line is that NOSM has been good for Northern Ontario, and there is still a lot of work because our rural communities, particularly the remote ones and the Indigenous ones, are still very underserved. There's still a lot of work we need to do.
Understood. But Sarah Newberry, let me follow up with you. If the whole idea in setting up the Northern Ontario School of Medicine in the first place was the theory that if you train docs in the north, they'll stay in the north, apparently 94% are staying in the north. I mean, that seems to sum up a pretty good news story, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there is some good news in that. And I think to Dr. Chervin's point, that statistic of 94% that is drawn from a particular study really looks at those graduates who entered family medicine, which is roughly half of the cohort to begin with. and those that did both their undergrad and their postgrad training at NOSM, which represents really a quarter of the undergraduate cohort. Many of those are indeed staying in Northern Ontario, but they're staying largely in the urban centres in Northern Ontario, and that is important, and there's huge value in that. But to the clip that you played of Mr. Spadoni in White River, rural communities are not experiencing an influx of new graduates to our practices in the way that I think was initially anticipated. In real numbers, what the data from NOSM suggests is that somewhere between 3 and 5 physicians are entering rural practice out of NOSM's programs each year across all of Northern Ontario. And when you compare that to the real current need, which in Northwestern Ontario alone is for 56 full-time family physicians in our rural communities only, that 3 to 5 graduates per year does not come close in any way to meeting existing need.
Well, let's go to Clay Hammond, who practices in Northwestern Ontario. What can you add to what Sarah just said?
Steve, I'd like to redirect the conversation a little bit away from NOSM and the excellent job that NOSM's doing. It's a young medical school. I think what we're seeing on the ground in Northwestern Ontario, and it would be great if we could have a map of Northern Ontario to just, celebrate and look at the vast geography that there is there. In Northwestern Ontario, where I am, we're seeing fewer residents over the last number of years. And I don't think this is NOSM's doing. NOSM is doing everything it can to help support the education of medical students, and perhaps we need to sort of highlight for the general population and public that medical students are undergraduates that we all educate in our rural communities primarily and bring them to a level of education where then the next step is to go on to become a resident physician. And those are the doctors that we need to see in our communities, because once they come and do their postgraduate medical education as a resident physician in our communities, we have a much greater probability of attracting them and retaining them in the work environments where they come and train. We haven't seen nearly enough for long enough time in our communities, and I think that from my point of view, the finger needs to go towards our government and how it funds the medical school to get us more residents into our rural areas.
Well, let's just actually, since you've said it would be great to look at a map, we're going to do that. And Chuck, I wonder if you could follow up, since you practice in Northwestern Ontario as well, or you're the recruitment and fundraising coordinator in Northwestern Ontario. How far a drive from where you are to Winnipeg?
We're about 3.5 hours. We're equidistant to Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, 3.5 hours other direction.
And how long a drive to Toronto?
That's a 2-day haul at 21 hours.
See, this is what I think people who live south of the French River don't necessarily understand, is that your orientation is very much towards Winnipeg, which is the closest big city, and Toronto is in another time zone, right?
Absolutely.
So what does that mean in terms of where you look to try to make, alliances, to where people go to get treatment, to where people go to find solutions for the healthcare ailments that trouble the North?
Yeah, well, our recruitment strategy has changed completely since the inception of NOSM. We used to go all over Canada to large physician recruitment fairs and cast our net far and wide. And now our focus really is on the 2 campuses, and probably 90% of my work is focusing on providing a good learning and living experience for the medical learners that come from Thunder Bay and Sudbury and spend time in our community. And we know that they're not all going to come back. The strategy is to deputize those people that become ambassadors for your community, and we hope that if they don't come back and work full-time, they'll say good things about our community, and perhaps they'll come back and locum. And we have seen some success, but I think that there are holes in the game, and we're not providing a lot of hope for the smaller communities. I mean, Dryden isn't a large community, but the smaller communities that don't have the capacity to provide a lot of variety and scope of practice for medical learners, they're missing out. And as a result, I think that there's some some communities that feel like they're not seeing a lot of the benefit from having the med school in Sudbury and Bay.
Yeah, Catherine, let's talk about lifestyle for a second, because you know, from what I hear, one of the difficulties in trying to convince doctors from graduating from the south to go north is they can't handle the lifestyle of Northern Ontario. Then you have the issue of the person's spouse, who may also have a tough time, you know, finding meaningful work as well. Do any of those problems get solved if you graduate from a university that's actually in the north?
Well, the advantage of training people in the north is that they then get to experience firsthand all of the joys of living in a rural community. And one hopes also that their spouse, their significant other, will possibly be able to find work, because you're right, those are some of the biggest challenges with recruiting. And I do want to emphasize that we all of us own a piece of the recruiting puzzle, and we all need to work together. As you know, we had a summit just a couple of weeks ago focused on recruiting and retaining physicians, particularly family physicians, who really are the backbone in rural healthcare, because they provide primary and secondary care. They are essential to a healthy workforce. And so it has to be the communities, the universities, the policymakers, the health administrators. We all need to work together. And if we can do that, and we had some great ideas that came out of that summit. So,
Sarah, if I asked you to make the pitch for the North, make a pitch to a prospective doctor and tell them why, of course based on your own experience, it's worth practicing in the North, and if they have a spouse, it'll be okay for them too.
Yeah, so I think this is a really important thing, and it's something that we do need to do a better job explaining to new graduates. What I love about practicing in Northern Ontario, and in a small community in Northern Ontario in particular, is the breadth of professional practice that I have. My opportunities to practice not only in the clinic, but in the hospital setting, to work doing inpatient care, palliative care, covering the emerge department. There's a breadth of skill set that I can apply here that professionally is deeply satisfying to me. And I also value very much the opportunity to live with the people for whom I care, my neighbors, my kids' teachers. There's an interweaving of life in small communities that is very satisfying at a personal level. I think the question of spousal employment is an important one for people to explore and to consider. It's amazing to me the ways in which technology and jobs that are technology-based can be done now from small communities. And we've certainly seen new grads coming to places where their spouse works in IT or engineering or design, and they're able to do those jobs from a small community in ways that haven't been possible in the past. So from my standpoint, some of those doors are opening in new and valuable ways.
Clay, let me get you to follow up with this. You know that there are some people who believe that because essentially the citizens of Ontario pay, I don't know what it is, 85% of the cost of educating doctors in the province, that there may be some obligation on those graduates to practice where the need is as opposed to practicing where they want. And my question for you is, do you think people should be, upon graduation from any medical school in the province, but particularly NOSM, forced to practice north of the French River in places where there is particular need?
Steve, of course not. That makes no sense. If we force people to do things, it's a Band-Aid solution at the best of times for a couple of years. What I would like to highlight, and was brought up by both Chuck and Sarah, is the idea of the generalist doctor, the generalist family physician, training in our communities as a resident and learning how to work as a generalist in the hospital, in the nursing home, in the office, and embedding themselves in the community socially. This happens when we work as generalists in our communities. It's much less likely to happen if somebody's forced to go and work somewhere. They just won't go. And I think this is perhaps part of what we're seeing in overall healthcare workforce changes. There's a changing dynamic where it seems like it's less favorable for somebody to go and work as a generalist. We need to think of ways to make that career opportunity something people want to come and do. And those are my observations.
I'm going to follow up on this with Chuck, because you'll have to admit I'm not completely surprised that a representative from the Ontario Medical Association is opposed to forcing doctors to practice anywhere in particular. But Chuck, you're not a member of the OMA, and so I'm going to ask you to follow up. Do you think there's any value in forcing doctors to work where the need is most for a period of time upon graduation?
I agree with Clay. I don't think that there is. I think that there's different ways that you can incent people. I know in Manitoba, University of Manitoba offers people that go and work in remote, underserviced areas. If you provide a little bit of time there, you're guaranteed a residency slot in a specialized area. So I think there are other ways of doing that. You know, we have in the past, historically, we've thrown large amounts of money to incent people to come and work to our community, and they came and they would work, 2 years, 2 hours, 2 minutes, complete the return of service agreement, and they were gone. And I think, when you're forcing or throwing large dollars at people, it's a short-term stop-gap solution. And I think the focus really needs, I think I alluded to it earlier, is to provide a good learning and living experience in our community. And we have some wonderful opportunities to learn. Sarah talked about, the breadth of scope. It's a real different game in the remote and rural communities, and you're continuously testing yourself, and your every day is different and new, and you're not referring to people down the hall. You are the cardiologist, you're the neurologist, you're the emergency medicine specialist, and those are attractive practices, and we just need to continue to work and expose people to the good in our respective communities. I think, we're starting to see some success. Nora's got some graduates, Fort Francis, Red Lake, some here in Dryden. Marathon is doing very well. There's success stories, but forcing people, I think, is, you push people there, they just push back and push away.
Sarah, what's your view?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think communities don't want physicians who don't want to be there. We want physicians in our communities who can embrace the community, who can support the community need, who will come when they're called because the community matters to them. I think, to Chuck's point, there are opportunities to incent people to come, but I don't think anyone wants to see physicians forced to work in places that they don't want to be. I don't think that that's a recipe for the provision of high quality, excellent care in a community-focused way.
Catherine, I saw you nodding your head the whole time, so I'm not going to ask you because I know you agree. So I will ask you a different question, which is, what are the specialties that Northern Ontario cities and towns are particularly missing right now?
Well, there are many. The primary one is family physicians, as we've heard from our other panelists. The full scope family practitioner is probably the highest need in the north.
But I mean beyond that.
Beyond that,
cardiologists, oncologists, whatever.
Well, we need generalists. So we need general internists. We need general surgeons. We particularly need family practice anesthetists in the smaller communities to support surgery and maternity care in those communities. There's a desperate need, as I'm sure you know, for more psychiatrists and mental health practitioners in the north. So pediatricians, again, there's a high need for all those general specialties. Public health preventive medicine, yet another specialty in high need.
Clay, what do you do if you live in Timmins and you need a heart bypass surgery? What happens?
I'm not the one to ask about Timmins. Sorry, Steve. I'm way over in the other time zone on the other end of the
Okay, fair
province.
enough. So let's say Kenora. What happens if you live in Kenora and you need heart bypass?
Well, this might be instructive for our difficulties in northwestern Ontario. If you need heart bypass surgery, you've had to go to a heart cath lab. Where I am, the choices are Winnipeg. That's where I'm sitting today, by the way. I drove to Winnipeg to be on the TV Ontario program. Or you can go 6 hours into the other time zone to Thunder Bay. In some cases, you could go to a cath lab in the United States. We just had the Super Bowl. It was, 8 hours south of here. Almost as quick to get down to the Mayo Clinic as it is to get to Thunder Bay from where we are. From there, you hope that your heart center has the capabilities of completing bypass surgery if that's determined to be needed. Unfortunately, in many cases, this isn't just for cardiac care. From our neck of the woods up in northwestern Ontario, if you go through Thunder Bay, you'll end up down in the Greater Toronto area or Ottawa in another part of the province for further care. And it's always excellent care. It's a costly endeavor, as you can imagine. It's a sometimes personally traumatic endeavor to have to travel so far away from family. And again, I'll bring it back to my neck of the woods. We're 2 hours away from Winnipeg, but we have a provincial boundary that creates untold strife in coordinating care across that boundary. That, to me, as far as this area between Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, an area that's the size of France, what we need to do in northwestern Ontario, regardless of funding constraints, regardless of the bureaucracy that seems to be increasing in medicine and in healthcare delivery, is we need to start being able to talk to the Manitoba government, to the Manitoba school, medical school, and to frontline physicians as to how we can better deliver care.
Well, let me follow up on
region.
that, Clay. Can I want to understand this, because my understanding was that if you lived in northwestern Ontario, and it made more sense, obviously, for you to drive 2 hours to Winnipeg to get, let's say, cancer treatment, as opposed to all the way down south to Toronto, you do that, and then the government of Manitoba would send the government of Ontario a bill for that. Is that not how it works?
It would seem to be the best way to make things work on paper. Unfortunately, on the ground, and I think this is because we don't work together, we don't plan together. We're in different jurisdictions, especially since the outset of LHINs and regional healthcare planning. We're not planning together anymore. So we don't have good plans to move patients from northwestern Ontario to Winnipeg for care. And we don't have good plans to actually move physicians and have physicians come and outreach into northwestern Ontario. So I'm becoming very northwestern Ontario centric in my focus on a show that was to span all of northern Ontario. But I'm glad you put up that map at the beginning just to show how different it can be in all of our communities across the north.
Indeed. Sarah, can I get you in at this point, because I want to ask you, let's say you've got a patient in Marathon who's got cancer and needs cancer treatment. I want people in the south to understand it's not exactly like hopping on the subway and going to Princess Margaret Hospital. What are your options under those circumstances?
Yeah, so this is a really significant issue for patients. Typically what happens is that we refer them to the cancer clinic at Thunder Bay Regional, and they do a remarkably good job of cancer care delivery. Patients who require radiation therapy have to live in Thunder Bay for typically 5 to 6 weeks at a time. Patients who require chemotherapy often have that initiated in Thunder Bay. But Thunder Bay has done a lovely job of outreach into the region so that patients can actually receive their chemotherapy locally here in Marathon and in many of the northwestern Ontario communities, provided by a local nurse and local physician under the supervision of one of the regional oncologists. Now, all of that is true if it's a fairly, what I would consider straightforward cancer. For people who have multiple myeloma, require stem cell transplants, or are children with cancer, then the whole process becomes much more complicated and involves a significant amount of travel to Toronto, typically, or London if they're a pediatric.
And what's the distance?
Patient.
What's the distance between Marathon and Thunder Bay?
So the distance for us is it's a 3.5-hour drive to Thunder Bay on good roads. If all goes well, typically it's a little bit longer than that, and then the flight is a 2-hour flight to Toronto.
I wonder, Catherine, is it just a fact of life when you live in Northern Ontario that you expect that if you get sick, chances are you're going to have to take a long trip to get treatment? Is that in the mindset in Northern Ontario?
I think that is the reality. We would like to change that where it's feasible and where we can also ensure excellent outcomes, because certainly patients, the people of Northern Ontario, they want care close to home wherever possible. It's extremely stressful. And we haven't talked much about the Indigenous communities where things, the First Nations, where things are even worse than in other rural communities. But travel out of the community, away from family, is very stressful. So I think people do accept it as a reality, and we would like to work with all our other partners to change that for the better.
Chuck, what's your view of that reality?
Well, I think that's 100% accurate. It is just a fact of life right now. You know, I broke my leg. I got a reduction done here in Dryden, and then I had to drive with the other foot to Thunder Bay to the fracture clinic to see that. And we all know of examples of people that have had to travel. And for more serious ailments, the norm is going to Toronto at great expense, and you're cut off from your family, your social support networks at a very difficult time, and often at large personal expense.
How's your leg, Chuck?
It's just the reality.
How's your leg?
I'm okay.
You're okay now? But how far a drive is it from Dryden to Thunder Bay?
3.5 hours. Like Sarah said, if the highways are good, 3.5 hours in the winter, you're looking at 4. But for some people, you know, they don't have access to, they don't have a car. And public transit, you know, the buses are irregular and infrequent. The flights are, I won't even talk about a flight from Dryden to Thunder Bay. You can fly from Toronto to Europe cheaper. So.
Do I have this right? You drove all that way with your left foot?
I shouldn't have brought that up. I did, yeah.
You are more talented than we initially thought. That's impressive. Let's talk about this, because you referenced it a second ago, Catherine. There was a health summit in Thunder Bay just a couple of weeks ago addressing some of the challenges that are facing Northern Ontarians as it relates to their medicine. Did you get any sort of made in the North solutions that you thought, bingo, that'll work, let's make that happen?
Well, we certainly have the beginnings of some solutions, and it really was, we had all the partners that I mentioned there. We had, and it is extremely important that solutions are driven by and created in partnership with communities, because they know what they need on the ground.
So give us an example.
An example of a
solution.
Need?
No,
a solution.
Of a new solution to an old problem.
Well, I'm going to give a very specific NOSM solution, and this relates also to Indigenous communities. So we have created a remote First Nations residency stream in our residency program. And this is a stream where the resident is learning family medicine and also learning about traditional approaches to Indigenous traditional approaches to healing, worldview, Indigenous knowledge.
Do the students have to be Indigenous?
They don't have to be Indigenous, but they're learning about how to live and work in an Indigenous community and care for Indigenous people. And this particular stream does have a return of service, which is what we were talking about earlier, to a remote, so a fly-in Indigenous community. This is in its very early days, but we're very optimistic about that.
Sarah, any Made in the North ideas that you want to share?
Well, one of the things that really struck me is actually a Made in the South, far south idea. But one of the guest speakers that we had at the summit was a physician named Dennis Lennox from Australia, who has over the last decade or so endeavored to enrich the capacity of the rural workforce in Australia, and really talked about how we move from fragile physician workforces to really flourishing physician workforces. And the notion of all of the ways in which we need to join things up, join up communities, join up recruiters, move out of a situation in which we're competing with one another for a resource, but in fact, sharing what we have, collaborating better, and coming together in a much more fulsome way, to Dr. Chervin's point about policymakers, educators, administrators, communities, and clinicians. No one owns currently the physician workforce challenge, and we need to find a much better way of owning it and driving it together. And I think that they have had success in Australia, and I think we can adapt some of those ideas for our northern context in a way that I feel quite hopeful about.
Clay Hammond, you got a new solution to an old problem you can share with us?
I think the solutions have been there all along. They're in front of us. I think the observations that we've highlighted today certainly will help inform the future solutions that we come up with. My observation is that we need to have dialogue with the University of Manitoba about the new Northern Indigenous Rural Residency Stream so that we can work together collaboratively with Manitoba to help Northwestern Ontario. The other thing I would put forward would be that the physician's voice, especially the generalist physician's voice, be listened to. We haven't been listened to a lot by government over the last 6 years, and I think the more we're listened to, the more solutions we'll have locally in our communities. And I think we'll all get there by working better together over the next couple of years, hopefully to rearm Northwestern Ontario with a larger physician workforce.
Clay, let me do one quick follow-up with you. I'm sure you've heard this before. There are people in Northwestern Ontario who say part of the solution here involves Northwestern Ontario becoming part of Manitoba, where there is a more, well, it's closer, the links are closer, for a whole host of reasons. The capital city obviously is a lot closer in Manitoba than it is in Ontario. What do you think of that idea?
I'm an instigator there. I was trying to wake up the local politicians to the idea that we really do need to be conversing with Manitoba about how healthcare is delivered and make it a priority. You know, it's an election issue coming up, the underfunding of healthcare in general and how we can best get ahead with getting more resources, especially in the magnified settings of the chronically underserviced areas in the north.
Okay, but so you're not hitting it on the head here. Hit it on the head. Do you want to separate? Do you want to separate and join Manitoba?
I love Manitoba, but I'm a Northwestern Ontario patriot. So what I want to do, though, is I want to work with my neighbors to provide better care to people and patients in Northwestern Ontario.
Sarah, excuse me, Catherine, you wanted to add.
So I do, because I do need to say, because this is really brand new, not quite completed, but NOSM is almost to the point of signing an agreement with University of Manitoba to provide residency education and collaborate in other ways around academic issues. So,
and you didn't have to separate to make it happen.
We didn't have to separate. No, we can work in partnerships, and maybe this is the message that really the more we work together, the better off we all are. So I'm really excited about the partnership with the University of Manitoba, and I think good things will come out of that, along with all the other partnerships.
How long is the partnership for? Is it a length of time?
It'll start at 5 years, and hopefully be renewed. Like this is.
Gotcha.
That's a beginning.
I know none of you is a politician, but the fact is we're 4 months and change away from the next provincial election. And this is the time when people who care about an issue try to get it on the radar screen of all of the parties that are running for office. Chuck Schmidt, what do you think you can do to make Northern Ontario healthcare a bigger priority for all the parties that are running?
Well, I think we need to advocate, I think, a unified voice. And we talk from a recruitment perspective. We're creating an organization and a common voice for all of our communities and informing the public and the powers that potentially will be about the issues that we're dealing with. I think it's an awareness issue, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and so I think some lobbying efforts are hard to do.
Sarah, if there were one promise you wanted the next government of Ontario to fulfill, what would it be?
Yeah, I really want to see a commitment to the steering committee that came out of the summit to really understanding the health human resources issues, and not just the current issues, but to actually get a handle on health human resources workforce planning moving forward. I don't think we're doing much planning, And that's leaving us in a situation where we're not actually even meeting current need. So to grapple with the issues, to understand the data about the needs of our communities, and to anticipate the challenges that we can already easily foresee around retirements, leaves, aging population, economic challenges for some of our communities. I want a commitment to really grapple with that and to moving forward with some of the ideas coming out of the summit to make this better for our communities.
Catherine, I got about a half a minute left. What's the one promise you want to see whoever forms the next government fulfill?
I have to echo what Sarah said, to support the Task Force Steering Committee, which is multilateral, involves all the partners with strong commitments from the Ministry of Health, both LINs, the NOSM, Health Force Ontario. That's the beginning of the task force. We need support for that to move forward with creative solutions that probably none of us can actually imagine right now, but we need new ways of thinking, and Australia has shown us some of those ways.
Gotcha. I want to thank all of you for coming on TVO tonight and sharing your views about what healthcare life is like in Northern Ontario. Clay Hammett, the Kenora family physician and anesthetist who had to drive all the way to Winnipeg, Manitoba to be on TV Ontario tonight. Clay, we thank you, and I hope you drove with your right foot. Sarah Newbury, the rural physician in Marathon, Ontario. Chuck Schmidt, Recruitment and Fundraising Coordinator for the Dryden Regional Health Centre. Catherine Chervin, Vice Dean of Academic for NOSM, the Northern Ontario School of Medicine. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.